Hey guys, welcome you all in T3P Technology to the Point. In this video, we will talk about more questions related to AWS Certified Solution Architect exam, and this is the new version which is launched now because earlier version that SAA-C02 is expired. So this part is also prepared in a way that it will help you for the new version of exam. I just gone through the topics and trying to cover each topic from the new version. So in this video we will go through the questions and their explanation, and also we will understand why we are not choosing the wrong options given and why we are choosing the correct answer. So that will help you to remember longer period of time if there is any change in the question also, so you will be easily to tackle that questions. So without wasting time, let's get started with the questions. So guys, let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking a company runs a large batch processing job at the end of every quarter. The processing job runs for 5 days and uses 15 Amazon EC2 instances. The processing must uninterrupted for 5 hours per day. The company is investigating ways to reduce the cost of the batch processing job. Which pricing model should the company choose? The option we are having: reserved instances, spot instances, on-demand instances, dedicated instances. So what is actually our requirement is this job should run in every quarter, not throughout months or the days. First thing. Next thing, and this job should not be interrupted within that 5 hours. Okay, so it's run like 5 days and utilize 15 EC2 instances. So first keyword we need to understand about the uninterrupted. Another thing we need to keep, it's a need to run every quarter, not every day. So when we are talking about the every quarter or every month or something which is not continuously running, so we can't go with the reserved instances. As you know, we always go for the reserved instances whenever we need to keep our services up and running throughout the time period. Okay, so either we want to go for 1 year or the 3 years, then we will go with the reserved instances. So in this case we will not go, otherwise our cost will be higher. Okay, so we will not go with the first option, reserved instances. If we will talk about the spot instances, we know it is cheaper, but the thing is when we are talking about the 5 hours uninterrupted, then we can't go for the spot instances because it can be interrupted and it might be not available to the new customers also, so we can't go for this one. On-demand instances, it seems correct to me because this is something whenever we need it, what type of requirement we are having, on-demand instances always fulfill that one. So we just need instances during every quarter for 5 days and 5 hours uninterrupted, that we can get it easily. So in this case we will go for the on-demand. If I talk about the dedicated instances, we can't go for this one also because of this cost, because dedicated instance is something which is reserved for us and assigned dedicatedly to one entity, so we can't go for this one also because of huge cost. Here we need to think about two things. First is cost, another thing when it need to be run, third thing it is can be interrupted or not. So here for uninterrupted we can't go for few options like spot instances. If we will talk about the cost, we can't go for the dedicated. If we are thinking about every quarter, every month, every week kind of scenario, we can't go for the reserved instances. So in this all cases, on-demand instance always help us. So we will go for on-demand instances. Hey guys, let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking a company hosts a multiplayer game on AWS. The application uses Amazon EC2 instances in a single availability zone, and users connect over the layer 4. This is the keyword here, layer 4. Next is solutions architect has been tasked with making the architecture highly available and more cost effective. So there are two keywords in this statement. First is architecture should be highly available. Next thing, it should be cost effective. They are asking how can the solutions architect best meet these requirements. Okay, so first let's talk about the option what are we having. Configure an auto scaling group to add or remove instances in the availability zone automatically. Second option is increases the number of instances and use smaller EC2 instances instant time. Configure a network load balancer in front of the EC2 instances. Fourth one is configure an application load balancer in front of EC2 instances. Configure an auto scaling group to add or remove instances in multiple availability zones. So you can see there are two options related to the load balancer, two option is related to auto scaling group, and one option is related to the increment of number instances and uses the smaller size of instances. Okay, so first let's talk about the options related to the auto scaling. Okay, so in the first one they are talking about add or remove instances in the availability zone automatically, and in the last option they are talking about add or remove instances in a multiple availability zones automatically. Okay, so in first one there is only one availability zone, in the fifth option there are multiple availability zones. So here when we are talking about the architecture which is highly available, we always go with the multiple availability zone architecture, because if we have only one availability zone, then it might be possible if that availability zone gets down, then our services or application will stop. So we will go with the option multiple availability zone here. If we need to go for auto scaling group, and if we will talk about the load balancer, as it is mentioned in the question that we need to connect, users need to connect over the layer 4 that comes for the network load balancer, because application load balancer comes at layer 7. So in this case we will go with the network load balancer here. Then there is the option to increase the number of instances. Actually here they did not mention that we should go automatically or manually. So we assume we need to think like this way, because we have the others option with the auto scaling. So here it is manually, and manually we can't justify that how many instances we are needing as per the requirement. So it should be automatically, otherwise it will not be cost effective. So we can't go with the option number 2 here. Okay, and we can't go with the single availability zone because of highly availability, and we can't go with the application load balancer because of layer 4. So our answer for this question will be option 3, that is configure a network load balancer in front of the EC2 instances, and the last option, that is configure an auto scaling group to add or remove instances in multiple availability zone automatically. So this will this will suffice as per our requirement. So you will go with the option number 3 and option number 5 here. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. This question we are talking about a solutions architect is creating a system that will run analytics on financial data for several hours a night, 5 days a week. Okay, so this process or this application need to run 5 days a week. The analysis is expected to run for the same duration and cannot be interrupted once it is started. So we need a solution uninterrupted. The system will require for a minimum of 1 year. That means we are looking for some kind of reservation as well. What should the solution architect configure to ensure the EC2 instances are available when they are needed? So the option we are having: saving plans, on-demand instances, regional reserved instances, on-demand capacity reservations. So the thing is, if you have gone through the AWS documents for the pricing or these saving models, then you get to know that the saving plans and reserved instances are good. When we can expect some kind of interruption as well. Okay, it is expected there to say. So sometimes we go to save our cost to that kind of solution, but here the service or application we are running, that should be uninterrupted. So we can't go with the saving plans or the regional reserved instances. So first and third option is not good for this choice. Next is for the uninterrupted solutions. I have already mentioned in the previous question that on-demand is the best choice, but here itself again we are having two choices with the on-demand instances and on-demand capacity reservation. So the thing is, if we will go with the on-demand instances, then it's not good for the 1 year requirement which is given, because here we need some kind of reservation as well. And uninterrupted is fine, but about the reservation it will not fulfill, otherwise it will be costly. Okay, so whenever it is mentioned in the cost in the questions or not, we always need to think about the best practice. Okay, so if we are having the choice of both on-demand instances, on-demand capacity reservation, and in the question they are asking uninterrupted for 1 year, then always we will go with the on-demand capacity reservation. That will help us to fulfill this requirement which is asked in the question. So here we will go with the option number 4, that is on-demand capacity reservation. So now let's talk about next question. Let's talk about this question. As solutions architects need to back up some application log files from an online commerce store to Amazon S3. It is unknown how often the logs will be accessed or which logs will be accessed the most. The solution architect must keep cost as low as possible by using the appropriate S3 storage class. Which S3 storage class should be implemented to meet these requirements? The option we are having: S3 Glacier, S3 Intelligent Tier, S3 Standard Infrequent Access, S3 One Zone Infrequent Access. So now let's talk about the options one by one. So first we will talk about the S3 Glacier service. As we know, this is the service which is used to keep the archive data. So whenever there is a retrieval of this type of data, we need to pay some retrieval fees for that one. So sometimes when we are accessing more frequently, then our cost will be increases. So it will become expensive. So in this question that we don't know that how frequent we are going to access the data. It is unknown how often the logs will be accessed. It is mentioned in the question. So in this case, we can't go for this option here because it will be expensive. Next option about S3 Intelligent Tier. This seems correct to me because this is the tiering storage which is actually designed to optimize the cost by automatically moving the data to the most cost effective access tier without the performance issue, or we can say without the operational overhead. So it works by storing objects in two access tier. One tier that is optimized for frequent access and another lower cost tier that is optimized for infrequent access. So this is ideal in this case, but for the timing we will keep this option on hold. So let's talk about third option, that is S3 Standard Infrequent Access. So again here, when we use this access tier, in this case what happens, whenever we retrieve the data or access the data, we need to pay the retrieval fees again, so we can't go for this option. If we will talk about the last option, that is S3 One Zone Infrequent Access, again this storage tier also have to involve some cost whenever we retrieve the data or access the data, and when we are not sure, we can't go for this one, but otherwise our cost will be more and it will become more expensive. So first, third and fourth option we can't go. We will go with the option number 2, that is S3 Intelligent Tier. So that is our correct choice for this question. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking a company has two accounts for performing testing, and each account has a single VPC like VPC test 1, and in other account there is a VPC test 2. The operation team require a method of securely copying files between these Amazon EC2 instances in these VPC. That means that one instance is available in VPC test 1 and another is VPC test 2, and we need to find the secure method to copy file from one EC2 instance to another EC2 instance in different VPC. The connectivity should not have any single point of failure or bandwidth constant. Which solution should a solution architect recommend? So we need to go through each options here. So let's talk about first option: create a VPC gateway endpoint for each EC2 instance and update root table. Second option is attach a VPC private gateway to VPC test 1 and VPC test 2 and enable routing. Attach a direct connect gateway to VPC test 1 and test 2 and enable routing. Last option is creating a VPC peering connection between VPC test 1 and VPC test 2. See, if we will go with the first option, like create a VPC gateway endpoint, first we need to understand, can we create this for the EC2 instance or not? So the thing is, VPC gateway endpoint we can create for the EC2 instance. It can be created for the DynamoDB or S3 bucket, we can say. So it is not the best suitable answer for this one. So first option is wrong here. Let's talk about next option: attach a virtual private gateway to VPC test 1 and test 2 and enable routing. See, virtual private gateway, when we use it, it's like a VPN connection between multiple sites, we can say, or normally we use it to from our organization to connect AWS cloud. So in that case we use site to site VPN, and this virtual private gateway is used for that purpose. But here they are talking about within two EC2 instance different VPC, so it will not work here, so it's not correct. If we'll talk about the third option, attach a direct connect gateway to VPC test 1 and test 2 and enable routing. Similarly, like VPN connection, direct connect is like a dedicated connection between your organization and the AWS Cloud VPC. So in that case, we are having the dedicated connection, but here between the two VPC, we want to connect with the EC2. I don't think so it is best suitable in this case, so I'll not go with this one. And the last option is create a VPC peering connection between VPC test 1 and test 2. See, VPC, what is VPC peering connection? Let's understand. There are two types of VPC peering connection. That is, one is local peering and a remote peering. Remote peering is something when our VPC resides between different regions. Here in the question, it doesn't did not mention it is between within the same region or outside different region, so it's nothing to worry about that part. But here in common, they are talking about create a VPC peering connection. What happens when we create this peering connection? It will behave like they are having the smooth connection between both the instances, and it behaves like they are the connection, the communication between the traffic moving from one instance to another instance. It's like local connection. So that's why it seems here we need to consider like not to have any single point of failure and bandwidth constant. So here it will be like a same connection, so we will go with this option, and there will not be any issue with the bandwidth, or it will fulfill our requirement as per the question. So I'll go with the option number 4 here. Now let's talk about next question. Let's talk about this question. An e-commerce company runs an application on Amazon EC2 instance in public and private subnet. The web application runs in a public subnet and the database runs in a private subnet. Both the public and private subnet are in a single availability zone. The question is, which combination of steps should a solution architect take to provide high availability for this architecture? See, why they are focusing here about the high availability? Because in the question they are mentioning that right now the web application which is running in a public subnet and the database which is running in a private subnet, both the public and these private subnet are in a single availability zone, and they need to identify the steps through which they can provide the high availability for our applications. So why in normal cases this kind of scenario you can get in the question exam? Because the web application is something which is internet facing applications, so end user from the internet can access it, so that's why it is in the public subnet. And the database is something where we don't want to give access to the end user, that's why it is in the private subnet. This is about the architectural thing, so just good to understand this thing. Now we will go through the options what they are giving. First thing, first option is saying create new public and private subnet in the same availability zone but in a different Amazon VPC. See, when we are talking about the high availability, we always think about beyond the availability zone. If we are having the in the same availability zone, if something happened wrong with the same with the availability zone, our whole application will go down. So in that case it will not provide the high availability. So first option is seems incorrect to me. Next option, they are talking about create an EC2 auto scaling group in a public subnet and use an application load balancer. We'll see this option. Third option is create an EC2 auto scaling group and application load balancer that spans across multiple availability zone. So it seems like correct to me. And if I'll talk about the fourth option, create new public and private subnet in a different availability zone and create a database using the Amazon EC2 in one availability zone. Here the thing is, we are creating the public and private subnet in different zone, but the thing is problem with the database which we are creating on the EC2 instance in one availability zone, that can create the problem. So let's see the fifth option, that is saying that create new public and private subnet in a different availability zone and migrate the database to an Amazon RDS multi availability zone deployment. So now we'll see the options one by one. Okay, so as I mentioned, first option is not correct here, because here if we will create in the same availability zone, that will not give us a high availability. But there is another region for this also. If we will use multiple VPC, like we are already having one VPC and here they are suggesting to create these public and private subnet in different VPCs. So if we will use multiple VPC, then it's really difficult to manage the traffic. And also we can't use the load balance across the VPC. So that's why first option is not correct. If I'll talk about the second option, create an EC2 auto scaling group in the public subnet, and use an application load balancer. This is also not correct because it does not achieve the high availability, because in the question they are looking for a high availability. When we are talking about this solution, it will not provide us a high availability. So we are looking for a solution where we need multiple public subnet across multiple availability zones. So second option is wrong here. If we will talk about the third option, create an EC2 auto scaling group and application load balancer that spans across multiple zones, so it's correct here. And also high availability can be achieved by using the multiple availability zone, as I already mentioned in at the first place, when we are talking about within the same VPC. So we can use the load balance as well. Now we'll talk about the fourth option, that is create new public and private subnet in different availability zone. Create a database using the Amazon EC2 in one availability zone. The thing is, creating a database using an Amazon EC2, it will not provide the high availability, because this is not the database solution which is a mean for the high availability. But in the question we are looking for the high availability. So in that case, what will happen, we will create the, that is our fifth option, we will create the new public and private subnet in different availability zone and migrate the database to Amazon RDS multi-agent deployments, because this will provide the availability to failure to the another availability zone in case there is any failure in our primary database, or we can say in a availability zone. So if there is issue with the availability zone, still our database is available in different availability zones. So that's why we will go with the option number 3 and option number 4 here. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking, a solution architect needs to monitor application logs and receive a notification when a specific number of occurrence of certain HTTP status code error occurs. Which tools should the architect use? The option we are having: CloudWatch metrics, CloudWatch events, Trails, and CloudWatch logs. So let's talk about one by one what exactly these services are. So first we will talk about the CloudWatch metrics. So CloudWatch metrics is actually the fundamentals concept of CloudWatch, and metric represent a time ordered set of data points that are published to CloudWatch. And we can't use a metric alone, it is used when setting up monitoring for any service in CloudWatch. So we can't directly use the metrics for monitor the application logs and all, so this is not the correct here. If we will talk about the second option, that is CloudWatch events. CloudWatch events delivers actually a near real-time stream of system events that describe changes in the AWS resources. So we can generate custom application level events and publish them to CloudWatch events, but this is not the best tool for monitoring application logs. So here the requirement is we need to monitor application logs but not the events, so it is not correct here. Third is about CloudTrail trails. So CloudTrail service is used for monitoring APIs activities. So here it's not related to API activity, so this is also wrong here. The last option is CloudWatch logs. So what exactly this service is used for? It is used for monitoring application and system logs. So if we'll take an example of CloudWatch logs, it can track the number of errors that occurs in your application logs and send you a notification whenever the rate of errors exceed a predefined threshold. So in this case, when we need to monitor the application logs or either it is system specific logs, then we will use CloudWatch logs service. So in this question, our answer will be CloudWatch logs. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking, a company is storing a large quantity of small files in an Amazon S3 bucket. An application running on an Amazon EC2 instance need permission to access and process the files in the S3 bucket. Which action will most securely grant the EC2 instance access to the S3 bucket? So the option we are having: create an bucket access control list on the S3 bucket and configure the EC2 instance ID as a grantee. Second option is create an IAM role with the least privilege permission and attach it to the EC2 instance profile. Third option is create an IAM user for the application with specific permission to the S3 bucket. Last option is generate access keys and store the credential on the EC2 instance for use in making API calls. So let's talk about the options one by one. If we'll talk about the first option, that is create a bucket access control list on S3 bucket and configure the EC2 instance as ID as a grantee. It will not help here because we can't configure an EC2 instance ID on a bucket access control list, and bucket access control list cannot be used to restrict access in this case. So first option is wrong. Let's talk about next option, that is create an IAM role with the least privilege permission and attach it to the EC2 instance profile. It seems correct to me, but let's see if I can get the better answer for this one. Third option is create an IAM user for the application with specific permission to the S3 bucket. It will not help here as well, because the instance should be, should have some IAM roles for the delegation, not the user account. So this will not work here. So third option is wrong. The last option is generate access keys and store the credential on the EC2 instance for use in making API calls. So it is also not correct, because this is not the best practice to keep, or we can say, the store our credentials. And so that's why IAM roles are preferred in this case, as per this scenario. So we will go with the option 2, and let's understand what it is. So IAM roles should be used in place of storing credential on any Amazon EC2 instance, and this is actually a most secure way to provide permission to EC2 instances. And the thing is, where in the option itself it is mentioned that with the least privilege permission, that is the best practice to secure our credentials. Okay, so that's why we will go with the option number 2 here. Let's talk about next question now. So guys, let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking, an application has multiple components for receiving request that must be processed and subsequently processing the request. The company requires a solution for decoupling the application component, and the application receives around 10,000 requests per day, and request can take up to 2 days to process them. Requests that fail to process must be retained. Which solution meet these requirement most efficiently? So the options we are having: first, create an Amazon DynamoDB table and enable DynamoDB streams. Configure the processing component to process request from the stream. Next option we are having, decouple the application components with an Amazon SQS queue. Configure a dead letter queue to collect the request that failed to process. Next option we are having, use an Amazon Kinesis data stream to decouple application component and integrate the processing component with the Kinesis client library, that is known as KCL. The last option we are having, decouple the application components with an Amazon SQS topic. Configure the receiving component to subscribe to the SQL topic. So we have two options with SQS queue and SQS topic, and one with the Amazon DynamoDB table and stream. Another is Amazon Kinesis data stream. So in the questions they are asking, it is having multiple components, and the company required a solution for decoupling the application components. And the main requirement they are having, they don't want to lose the request, they want to retain those requests up to 2 days. That is the actual requirement. So now let's go through the options one by one. So if you will see the first option, that is saying create an Amazon DB or DynamoDB table and enable DynamoDB streams. Configure the processing component to process request from the stream. See, this solution will not work here because it doesn't offer any kind of retaining the request that failed to process or removal of items from the table, and is therefore it is less efficient. So we will not go with the option 1. Let's talk about the second option. So in this option they are saying that decouple the application components with an Amazon SQS queue and configure a dead letter queue to collect the request that failed to process, which is actually required in the question. So why we are going with this option? The reason is the SQS service we are having is ideal for decoupling the application component, and its standard queues can support up to 1,20,000 in-flight messages, and message can be retained for up to 14 days. Here the request is it is receiving around 10,000 requests per day, and we need to take it up to 2 days. So the correct answer for this question will be second, because it will ensure the retention of request that fails to process. So in this question, we will go with the option 2. Why we are not going with the option 3, that is Amazon Kinesis data stream to decouple application component and integrate the processing component with the KCR, because it is less efficient solution and will be less cost effective. Means if we will compare Amazon SQL service and this one, then it is costly than the Amazon SQL. So we are always looking for the most efficient service, and we also want to save the cost as per the requirement. So we will not go with the third option. The last option is decouple the application component with the Amazon SQL topic and configure the receiving components to subscribe the SNS topic. This is wrong actually, because it does not store any request. It directly get the request and forward all the notification to the subscribers. So but in the question they are asking to retain the request for up to 2 days. So we are having only one option here, that is Amazon SQL queue. So it will help us to fulfill this requirement. That's why we will go with the option 2 here. So now let's talk about next question. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking, a solution architect has been tasked with migrating 30 TB of data from on-premises data center within 20 days. The company has an internet connection that is limited to 25 Mbps and the data transfer cannot use more than 50% of the connection speed. What should a solution architect do to meet these requirements? So in the question, they are actually they are having 30 TB of data and they just have 20 days time to migrate this data from your organization's data center to AWS cloud, and they are having the internet connection of 25 TB, and but we can use only 50%. That means 12.5 Mbps we can use. So the option we are having: AWS data syncs, AWS storage gateway, AWS snowball, and the last option we are having site to site VPN. So the thing is, if you calculate this thing, 30 TB of data, if you will migrate with the speed of 25 Mbps, it will take around 200 days, and we are just having 20 days. But here we are not using still even 25 Mbps. We can use up to 12.5 Mbps. So the days will more than 200, and we don't have that limitation. So we need to avoid in this question, which is option related to the internet. So if you will see the option like AWS data sync, AWS storage gateway, and site to site VPN, these three options, like first, second, and fourth, are related to the internet. They use internet to move the data or migrate the data. So we can't go with these options. So we are having only one AWS snowball, that is the physical device which will come to your data center, and then you can upload your data and migrate this data to AWS cloud. So that is the feasible option I can see from out of 4. So I'll go with the AWS snowball. So that's it for this question. Let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. A company has created a disaster recovery solution for an application that runs behind an application load balancer. The DR solution consists of a second copy of the application running behind a second application load balancer in another region. The solution architect requires the method of automatically updating the DNS record to point to the ALB in the second region. What actions should the solution architect take? The option we are having: enable an application load balancer health check. Second option: use Amazon Event Bridge to cluster the ALBs. Third option: enable an Amazon Route 53 health check. Fourth option is configure an alarm on a CloudTrail tray. So what exactly they are asking in the question? So they created a disaster recovery solution for application which is actually running behind a load balancer, and the DR solution consists second copy of the application as well, which is also running behind the second load balancer, which is actually in different region. So solution architect requires a method to automatically update the DNS record to point the application load balancer in the second region. So let's talk about the options one by one. First, they are saying about the enable an ALB health check. So this option is not correct actually. The reason: this will simply perform the health check of an instance behind the application load balancer, but we are here looking for combination of something which can help us to update the DNS records as well. So this will not help here. Second option, they are talking about the use Amazon Event Bridge to cluster the ALB. So this is also not correct because we can't cluster ALBs in any way. So this option is wrong here. Third option, enable an Amazon Route 53 health check. It seems correct to me because Amazon Route 53 health checks monitor the health and performance of our application, especially the web application, web servers, and other resources. And each health check that we create can monitor the health of a resource or status of the other health checks, status of an Amazon CloudWatch alarm as well. So this is the something which can help us to update the DNS record as well, because Route 53, if you know that this is the service which is kind of a DNS service in Amazon Web Services, means AWS Cloud. So this is seems correct to me. Let's talk about the first option or fourth option, then we will decide which is more accurate. The fourth option, they are talking about configure an alarm on cloud trail. It's also not correct here, because it only records the API's activities, so it will not help us to update the DNS record which is pointed to ALV. So the accurate, or we can say the most possible answer what I can see, it is enable an Amazon Route 53 health check. So I'll go with this one. So in any question, if you think that it is not correct, just mention in the comment section and give the reference why you are not okay with the answer, so it will help others as well. So let's talk about next question now. Let's talk about this question. In this question, they are asking, a company needs to migrate a large quantity of data from an on-premises environment to Amazon S3. The company is connected by a AWS Direct Connect, that is DX connection. The company requires a fully managed solution that will keep the data private and automate and accelerate the replication of the data to AWS storage service. Which solutions should a solution architect recommend? The option we are having: deploy an AWS storage gateway in stored volume mode and take point in time copies of the volumes using AWS backup. Next option we are having: deploy an AWS storage gateway with a local cache and store the primary data set in Amazon S3. Next is deploy an AWS data sync agent for the on-premises environment. Configure a task to replicate the data and connect it to public endpoint. Last option is deploy an AWS data sync agent for the on-premises environment and configure a task to replicate the data and connect it to VPC endpoint. So let's talk about the requirement first. What it is the requirement? We need to migrate the data from your organization to AWS, or we can say Amazon S3. The company is connected by AWS Direct Connect, so it can use direct data sync as well. So the company requires a fully managed solution that will keep the data private. When this talking about the data private, we can't go with the public endpoint here in the third option. So it is out of scope at this point of time, because when we use public endpoint, the data will go over the through the internet, so we can't use this option here when we are talking about the private. Okay, so third option we can go. So let's talk about first, second, and fourth option now. So the thing is, before talking about all three options, if you understand that these all options are belong to AWS storage gateway or AWS data sync. So first understand what is AWS data sync, which can be used to automate and accelerate the replication of data to AWS storage service. On the other hand, storage gateway is used for hybrid scenarios where servers need local access to the data with various options for storing and synchronizing the data to AWS storage service. So storage gateway does not accelerate replication of data, but here as per requirement we are looking for accelerate the replication of data to AWS storage gateway, so storage service. So in this case, the options related to the storage gateway is also out of scope. So as we already discussed, due to private requirement, data privacy private requirement, we can't go with the public endpoint and we can't go with the AWS storage gateway as well. So all first three options gone from here. So the correct answer for this question is deploy an AWS data sync agent for the on-premises environment and configure a task to replicate the data and connect it to a VPC endpoint. That is the actual requirement of this question. So we will go with the option number 4 here. So that is our correct answer for this question. Let's talk about next question now. So guys, that's it in this part. I hope you find these questions helpful, and it will help you to prepare for your AWS Solution Architect exam. And we will go for more questions in our next part. Till then, stay tuned and share this video with your friends who are preparing for this exam. And don't forget to click on like button. That is the only way I get the motivation to work on more content for you. So see you in next video. Till then, happy learning.